Hello, congregation of St. Andrews. This is the staff of St. Andrews. We're gathered for our staff meeting on Wednesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And we have some information to share with you about the year that has already passed, 2020. We're looking back at 2020 and remembering some of the highlights and celebrating the many folks that we came into contact with, even though we could not meet in our usual ways. And so we're going to take turns sharing with you some of the highlights from our different pieces of the ministry puzzle at St. Andrews. Hannah, will you begin?
I will. So I have 3 highlights for this year. The first one seems like a bazillion years ago in the summer, which was Compassion Camp. And we had this wonderful experience partnering with St. James Mount Airy. And we had 7 elementary school students, 6 volunteers, and 9 preschoolers who came every day to 3 hours on Zoom where we did Bible study and yoga and cooking and art activities. And it truly was what spiritual community could be on Zoom, which is something that we were really striving for. My second highlight this year is our Harry Potter book study, which finished a couple weeks ago. 6 youth led us through the first Harry Potter book. We talked about belonging and values and baptism, and we designed our own brooms and created new potions and tested our dragon trivia knowledge. There were 6 elementary school students and middle schoolers who participated in that, but it was all youth driven and youth led. The last highlight I have is our Sacred Ground community. This is the second time that St. Andrews has committed to going through the Sacred Ground journey. And this year it was led by Catherine Dilworth and Matt Baxter, and they have met faithfully every month to do the really hard work of looking at racism through history and really reflecting on their own journey. So I'm so thankful that technology allowed us to do all of those semi-new things, 2 brand new things, and 1 thing that was able to still happen with technology. So in addition to our highlights, we are also going to share some numbers with you. You may not know this, but I keep track of all numbers when we engage with someone, their touch points of ministry. Every Zoom meeting, every person who views something, a video on our Facebook page, every person who watches the sermon that comes out on video in the Sunday emails. I keep track of all of those numbers so we can really see how we are meeting people's needs spiritually and what avenues that people are most using. So through that tracking, we all have staggering numbers, in my opinion, to share with you. I have the privilege of sharing the first 2 numbers. The first one is adult formation. So this counts all EFM, every person who came to a Bible study, our Thursday, Tuesday Bible studies, reading with the rector, men's groups, Sacred Ground, Strong Schools, all of those items. Are you ready? 1,636 touch points, which is pretty amazing. I also can tell you our children and youth engagement touch points, which was 683. This was when we did Life and Times of Jesus, our youth group, Harry Potter, Compassion Camp, Sunday School, our confirmation class, which also seemed like a bazillion years ago, last summer. All of these moments came together for our children and youth.
Thank you, Hannah, for sharing those numbers. Nikki, what was your highlight from 2020 or highlights?
Well, there were quite a few, which might seem surprising given the circumstances that we were under. But one of the big highlights that I know people of St. Andrews were able to experience was handbells, which was something new that we started this year, or at the very end of 2020. And it was a great way to come together safely, socially distanced, with both the youth of our congregation as well as the adults of our congregation. And since then, I've heard, even in the past 2 weeks, from at least 3 or 4 who are interested in joining as it gets warmer and as we move further along this year. So that's incredibly exciting to know that handbells will still be here, even after what is happening now is over, which who knows when that is, but that's amazing to think that we can look forward to that. Aside from that, I'm still able to communicate with the chancel choir. And that's very exciting. We have some things that we did last year and for recordings and things like that. And so that's great that we're still able to keep in contact with them and the worship band, which you saw part of last Sunday. So really great that we're able to keep those things going and keep music going in such a tough time. It's wonderful. The number of touch points is 1,477. That is staggering in terms of the number of engagements that we were able to have in music, whether it was through recordings, handbells, choir, junior choir at the beginning of last year, hymn sings, which we had some hymn sing-alongs last year and for the holidays as well. So some really, really great things that have happened and will continue to happen in the music department at St. Andrews.
Thank you, Nikki. That is such good news. 1,477 is a lot of music touch points. All right, Jan, our Invite, Welcome, Connect coordinator, a grant-funded position that ran out in 2020, but then we reapplied for the grant with the diocese, and we got another year's worth of grant, which means we have another year of Jan Brinza in the role as coordinator of Invite, Welcome, Connect. So thank you, Jan, for being with us again in this capacity. Tell us about your favorite moments of 2020.
So I have a number of favorite moments. When I think back on all the in-person events that were held over this last year, and according to our statistics, our numbers, that was 878 people at a minimum attending these in-person events. One of my favorites was the community event that was held at the parish house, and it was for the Love of Music concert that we had. And that was one of my favorites because it involved not only St. Andrews, but a really large part of the local community too. We had beautiful singers and musicians from St. Andrews and from Glenwood and all our neighboring areas. And it was fun. And it was all ages who were included. So that was a really fun event that hopefully we'll be able to do again soon sometime. Some of my other favorites from the in-person events was our Pentecost parade. I think that was the first event that actually people came out and was able to do something during COVID. And it was just really fun, and everybody just enjoyed seeing people, even though we were really, really distanced in our cars, but it was fun seeing all the cars and all the people on the sides of our stops, all the smiling faces that of people that I don't think were really fortunate enough to see other people at that time. So I think that was a real eye-opener to a lot of us. Another event, especially remembering back on St. Patrick's Day, another event that we had planned and we had to cancel at the last minute was our newcomer dinner. And that would have been our second newcomer dinner in the Invite, Welcome, Connect initiative. And it was going to be a really fun dinner. It was going to be a St. Patrick's Day dinner with corned beef and cabbage, and we were all really excited, and we had a lot of people that were planning on attending. So hopefully we'll be able to get that newcomer dinner again rescheduled sometime in the near future. Some other events that were my favorites was the Lament Bonfire. That was a very touching, really heartbreaking event. But it really brought out a lot of people. I think it was helpful for everyone who attended to be able to just get the blessings from Dina and burn up their lament list. And that also involved St. Andrews and the local community. We saw a lot of people from a lot of our neighbors attending. Let's see, what else do I have on my list? We managed to do confirmation and bonfire and baptisms, including my granddaughter. That was a highlight, of course, for me. And then Christmas time rolled around, and we were still offering and trying to think of really creative ways to bring everyone together. And the Union Chapel Open House was a beautiful, very touching event. And a fun event was a St. Nick's drive-through, which we managed to do our St. Nick's with creative ways. So that's a good year in review for events.
Thank you, Jan. We sound busy. We sound like we actually saw each other at various points.
We were busy when you really think about like everything that took place.
And everything that took place took more time to plan and more volunteers and more great folks. So it was so great to have Jan and other staff members and volunteers because we did so many things in so many new ways. So that stands out to me. We've never done a lament bonfire before or a Pentecost parade. It was all new and wonderful. Thank you, Jan. So next, it's our ministry intern, Jennifer Grimelli. Jennifer, you came midway through 2020. So tell us what your highlights are from that segment of your time.
Yeah, it was not the internship that I expected, but it was possibly the internship that I needed to learn how to serve and worship with people in very different ways, which was not what I wanted. But it's what happened. And I'm super thrilled that the number I get to present is our non-Sunday worship, because this regular Sunday worship was so different. And if we were there and in person, it was not a traditional service like we expected. But our non-Sunday worship offerings are things like our morning prayer or the stuff that like our compline services we did during election season. Our total touch points for all those non-Sunday worship is 5,006 people. So even though I never got to see most of you in person, or if I did, you had mask on, so I don't recognize you, I got to see your faces on these non-Sunday worship things, which was wonderful. And I'm so thankful that I've had this experience with you all.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're glad you are with us and that you have so faithfully led some of those worship experiences as well as Sunday morning preaching and so forth. So next on our sharing of highlights, looking in our rear view mirror at 2020, which lots of people said good riddance to, but we are lifting up those things that happened in 2020 that were good and blessings and that we remember fondly. And so next we're going to hear from our very own Nancy Smith. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. So my highlights in 2020 were interacting with an amazing number of committed, passionate, dedicated staff and volunteers. Counters kept coming. People signed up to come and clean the parish hall and the chapel when we were doing some in-person services there or in-person events. The other thing I wanted to mention is the participation in the Red Cross blood drives that we had often throughout last year. They were full every single time. And in fact, they added several more as a result of people being able to sign up to come to our facility to donate blood. So I'm so grateful for that commitment from from everyone in the community. My number is small. My number is 266, which doesn't sound like a lot when you compare it to the humongous numbers that everybody else has mentioned, but that's 266 average weekly opens of the emails that we send out. And when you consider that our parish email list has 290 people on it, suddenly it's not such a small number after all. So all the times that you see something from St. Andrews in your inbox and go, oh gosh, another email. Well, that's because we're doing so much stuff. And we're doing so much stuff because of the commitment and the leadership of the volunteers and the parishioners at St. Andrews. So way to go, peeps.
Thank you for keeping us organized, Nancy, and communicating with us so well and clearly that we want to open those emails. So thank you for keeping it all together. You know, as you can imagine, we have not worked in the office in our usual ways with one another, and that's been its own challenge. For those of you that switch to work from home models, you know that there's something that you're missing. You don't have your coffee together and catch up in the same way. You're not connecting and sharing ideas. There's a lot of things that happen between us as staff members in person, just kind of chemistry, you know, things start to buzz that we just don't really have. And we have about an hour a week together in staff meeting on Zoom, and then we touch base with each other on other things as needed, mostly through email, telephone, and sometimes other Zoom meetings. So I do look forward to when the staff can come back together and work in offices again and have lunch together again. I really miss that. But that's about what we didn't get to do in 2020. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about what I'm really excited about from 2020 if I look back in that rear view mirror. First of all, one of the first things we did when we pivoted to what we thought might be a couple weeks of kids being out of school was the Life and Times of Jesus study every day. How ambitious were we? And a morning devotions every day at 8:30. Those were really ambitious things to take on and offer to the community. For my own spiritual life and my own emotional well-being, they added structure to my days at a time when my life was feeling very strange, when all of our lives were feeling very strange. And I was afraid to go and do certain things or be exposed to people that I know and love. And yet I could gather with people I know and love in those ways each morning. So those are some of my favorite things to remember back on at early pandemic tide that got me through that transition into the pandemic. I also have been learning the handbells. I am not Nikki's best handbell ringer, but I am working hard, Nikki, hard at my handbell. I just have to be able to see everything and highlight it and read it and pay attention, tap my foot, count, not be distracted by how great it sounds in other people. It's a lot. And it's a good discipline for me to just be carried away into something. It takes so much of my energy and focus to pay attention that I can't be worried about if my sermon's done or not. And what's going on in the world around me, whether it's political issues, justice issues, or pandemic issues. I'm just focused on handbells, and that has been an absolute gift to my life. So I'm grateful for that. That's a highlight for sure. And the other thing that if we go back to just before the pandemic started, our vestry was on retreat and came up with 3 priorities. And those 3 priorities were not created to get us through COVID. Like COVID was just kind of hitting the news at that time. It was February, and it was still very far away. I didn't really think it would get to us at that point. Little did I know. And so the vestry priorities that we established on that retreat in February focused on 3 words that we were going to continue lifting up: stability, partnerships, and flourishing. Stability in our finances and resources and well-being, so that we could partner with organizations and other communities and one another to the glory of God, so that we would flourish, not only through things that you can see, but also through the kind of growth that's inside of us, that we experience inside of us, flourishing in the light of Christ. And those stability, partnership, and flourishing priorities were really helpful touch points throughout the year. Really helpful words to keep in mind, even as we were transitioning and learning so many new things. So learning new things. I work with the best, the staff that is most growth mindset, learning mindset staff I could ever imagine working with. Throughout the pandemic, another highlight would be that everybody learned something brand new and then offered it to the community. And when I say learn something brand new, I mean learn like 10 or 40 things that are brand new. The ones that jump out to me is just before we started the handbell program, Nikki was over partnering at St. Thomas, Garrison Forest, or Owings Mills. She was learning how to lead handbells from Wanda in that congregation about 2 weeks before she started handbells at St. Andrews. And she was doing online courses, and she's a musician, but she was learning how to pivot and offer this program. And that was really wonderful to watch Nikki learn something new and offer it to us. And then throughout this time, Hannah learned how to do all kinds of things about a minute before she got us to do them, whether it was to do Facebook live worship and to teach me skills I needed for that, whether it was switching us over to StreamYard, which is our live stream technology. Hannah figures this stuff out and then makes it look so easy and walks the rest of us through it. And we are so blessed that she is so flexible with all that technology. And also updating our website periodically because everything was changing. We had to keep that face of St. Andrews very flexible. So lots of changes and adaptations there. And then Nancy learned how to manage some new online giving software and other servant keeper software that we're using in different ways so that we can streamline. And she learned how to work remotely with technology that needed to be upgraded, which in 2021 was just upgraded, thanks to a very generous donation. But she is working with, keeping our Wi-Fi going in the parish house, which was not always something we counted on before and became really imperative during COVID-19 precautions and our new ways of worshiping. So Nancy has basically learned how to do all the things she did before in really different ways. Oh, and set up registration forms for worship. Like, who would have thunk that we had to have people getting reservations and signing up for church? I mean, it's just such a foreign thing. And she managed all of that technology behind the scenes so that we could do what we needed to do and adapt. And worship together in person, outdoors, and so forth. So that was really useful. And Jennifer learned everything new with us. She learned what we were learning and also is trying to learn, like, so am I still feeling called to the priesthood? Like, is this what being ordained means? Having to learn a new type of technology every 2 weeks? Is this what I really want to be doing? So Jennifer's real learning in the parish is focused on faithfully serving God and learning different models and different ways communities do that. And she has had to learn so much, and she's been so not only adaptive and learning along with us, but she has led. And I think that's been a real help to us because there were times personally when I just was really glad she was willing to lead. And I'd say, you go ahead and take that, right? You take that. So hang on, let's see. So next I want to share that, that Jan figured out how to socially distance and welcome people, which that seems, we used to teach one another how to shake hands and greet people when they're walking in the door, hand them a bulletin. All of our welcoming, all of our invite, welcome, connect content really focuses on connecting with one another, if not with a handshake, certainly warmly and in person. And so Jan was able to learn and teach us ways to be welcoming that were warm and safe at the same time. And Jan, I'm just not sure there was somebody else who could have done that with the kind of care and attention you offered. And it helps that you know our congregation so well. That we could work on that with you and learn from you. And you also made sure that we put up signs to let people know what was going on, and made things look nice when we did gather, look beautiful and welcoming, which was a real kindness when we gathered together. I also want to highlight what great leaders, flexible, wonderful, adaptive, and growth mindset leaders we have on the vestry that have faithfully, and especially our former finance chair, Robert Evans, our current finance chair, Teresa Pachala, and our treasurer, Paige King. They have done the lion's share of work around the PPP and various financial things that really kept that stability piece on track for the year. So they have done wonderful work, and watching their faithful leadership and service has really shaped my own sense of what it means to be in community with God's people. And I think my last thing I want to share before I give you some real big, exciting numbers is how thrilled I am to serve a congregation that is living into the call to follow Jesus in such a way that people in the community are wondering if they're called to serve as leaders in the larger church community sense. And so I want to lift up that I am really excited that we have 5 persons in discernment in our congregation. And that's really lovely. And as we hear about ordination dates and other information, we'll keep you posted on that. So the numbers I want to share with you from 2020 are this. We had 8,834 people somehow worship with us on a Sunday, whether that's in person or on a pre-recorded worship service, live on our live stream, or later watching a recorded service in some fashion. 834 people. And this number is so big. The next one is so big. So I've got to explain just a little bit. This number is really big because it doesn't mean that people listen to it till the end. Okay, I just want to be really clear. Well, we don't know that they did or didn't. But we know that over 10,000 people have accessed the preaching that happened in the year 2020. Not only my sermons, but sermons by guest preachers and by Jennifer, our ministry intern, by some of those folks in discernment. We've had so many wonderful guest preachers as well in 2020. And we've had 10,803 people listen to those sermons, either on YouTube now that they are recorded or live. That includes our children's chapel sermon that Hannah took on once we couldn't really use children's chapel in the same way. So all of that preaching, all of that good news is really the best highlight of 2020, that many people are interested in the good news, and quite frankly, in 2020 really needed to gather and hear good news. So we give thanks to God. It's all to God's glory as we share these numbers and highlights with you. God bless.